Welcome to Lair of the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, I have some special guests with me as we are going to be listing our 10 favorite Ronnie James Dio songs. These are our favorite Ronnie James Dio songs across all eras of his career. So we're talking Rainbow, we're talking Black Sabbath, we're talking the Dio band. Who knows? Maybe there'll be an Elf song on somebody's list. You don't know until we get started, but joining me here today for this fun episode, for the first time here at the Lair of the Alchemist is Tony Dio. Tony, thank you for joining us here at the Lair.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yes,
we did do the trivia show. I was on one of your trivia shows.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, this isn't your first time at the Lair then.
Yeah. Second time.
First time for like a show in this type of format, we'll say. He was here for one of our Metal Jeopardy episodes. And of course, returning here as he's no stranger at the Lair. We've got Darren. Darren does Sabbath Sunday with me. We also have our podcast, Into the Void of Black Sabbath podcast. Okay, we are all really big Dio fans. Tony's such a big Dio fan that it's his last name. And so this was not easy to do because Ronnie, when you think about it, he's been in three very, very big bands, the Rainbow, Black Sabbath, and his own band Dio, and there's just so many classic songs that when you sit down and you really try to narrow it down to 10, it was quite the challenge. So this is going to be fun. All right, we're going to start with our number 10. We're going to go around. So Tony, what do you got for number 10?
Yeah, like you said, John, this is really tough to narrow it down to 10 songs. I had to scrap a couple of dry runs with it, and finally came up with what I think I'm satisfied with right now. It could change tomorrow. But the first song I'm going to go with is Caught in the Middle off of the Holy Diver record. It's got a cool, it's a very commercial song. I think they should have released that for a single. It's a really cool song. And if you're a diehard Dio fan, you may know as being Vivian Campbell, being the guitar player. That riff, he wrote that when he was in a band called Sweet Savage. And I think the song was called Straight Through the Heart, not to be confused with the Dio song. But that riff for Caught in the Middle was basically the riff to the Sweet Savage song as well. But so that's going to go with number 10 with Caught in the Middle.
Nice. I was wondering too why that was never a single, because you're right, it is very, radio friendly. So, all right, Darren, what do you got for number 10?
All right. Well, so I when I thought about top 10 Dio songs, I mean, some of them were just like so obvious, and I don't want to have any spoilers, but I mean, let's be real about it. You got Man on a Silver Mountain, you got Stargazer, you got Heaven and Hell, you got Rainbow in the Dark, Last in Line, right off the top of my head without even thinking about it. But that's boring. So what I wanted to do is, and my list is kind of mixed up. I mean, I've got what I would consider to be a few obvious ones. And then I've got some deep tracks that I like a lot, but nevertheless, they are deep tracks. And coming in at number 10 for me is, see this, the first Kerry Livgren solo album. Mm-hmm. And on it, Dio sings a song for Kerry called Mask of the Great Deceiver. That's really cool. Kerry Livgren, of course, is a guitar player, main lyricist from Kansas. I'm a big Kansas fan. I love early Kansas. I love all the stuff that Kerry Livgren did with Kansas. And so it's really cool to hear Kerry Livgren's lyrics, his music. It's really heartfelt, very, very Kansas-oriented sound. But if you know anything about Kerry Livgren, you know that he's somewhat of a spiritual person. So this solo album was basically Kerry Livgren really getting into that side of his creative inspiration. So what's interesting is this came out in 1980 and Dio had just joined Black Sabbath. And although I'm not sure, I'd have to look, I didn't really compare the dates, but I'd have to look and see which one came out first, whether it was Heaven and Hell or this Kerry Livgren album. But Dio singing Sabbath is like such a great fit because all of the I don't want to necessarily say evil, but the dark tonality of Iommi's guitar blends so well with Dio's voice. With this Kerry Livgren song, it's interesting because it's kind of the polar opposite of what Tony Iommi does. But Dio brings his standard delivery. Voice is kind of soft, and he gets, very gruff. But the lyrics are completely different from Sabbath lyrics, and it's not to say that they're totally like, over the top religious or anything. They're not, but they are different, and it just goes to show how versatile, even in 1980, Dio could be with his style of singing. In addition to that, in this particular song, there's some horns, but it's more like medieval horns, and Dio always had that medieval vibe to me, and it just couples so well with the horns. It sounds like fanfare, and then you have Dio's voice coming over, this fanfare, and it just sounds brilliant. So number 10 for me is the song "Mask of the Great Deceiver," sung by Ronnie James Dio on the Kerry Livgren solo album, "Seeds of Change."
Great pick. I've never heard that. I honestly never knew that. So yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out.
Two songs.
Yeah, he actually sings 2 songs on this album. They're both very good. "The Mask of the Great Deceiver" is really cool. I like the lyrics a lot.
Mhm.
So that's my pick. But the other song is really good too. If you have the opportunity to check it out, sure, just probably
Awesome.
YouTube clip.
Yeah, great pick. All right. Well, like you guys said, this is not easy. And I had sort of, Darren, you mentioned like those ones that immediately come to your mind, and I had the same thing. But then as I started putting my list together, I was like, I had a bunch of rough drafts also. What I usually do is just brainstorm the first ones that come to mind. Then I put them on the list, and then I start going, now, wait a minute though. I don't know. I got to move this one up. I do like this one better, this one better. And then before you know it, some start dropping off my list. And I was kind of surprised at some of the ones that dropped off my list. And maybe when we get to the end, maybe we can share a few that almost made our lists.
Yeah.
My number 10 is from Dehumanizer, and it's the song "I." This to me is just, first of all, I mean, I love the song. The riff is so heavy. I love the way it sort of starts, Iommi just playing that solo line, but when it sort of comes crashing in, it's just so pummeling. And there's a verse in this that I've just always loved, and it just sort of sums up Ronnie. He's a small in stature, but so mighty in voice and so mighty in his presentation. So this verse, "I am giant, I'm a monster, breaking windows in houses, buildings of glass." I mean, and the way he delivers that line is just, you can just picture, you just want to put your fist together, you just picture him, with his microphone delivering that line. I was so happy that when they did the Heaven and Hell band and they were playing deeper cuts, that they played that song. It's sort of a deep cut, I guess, in a way. When people think of Dehumanizer, it might not be the first song that they think of, but I always loved it. The riff is just killer. It's just this driving, pummeling thing. Vinny Appice just moving it along, and just Ronnie just sounds so strong and so powerful to me in that song. Always loved it. So that's my number 10. Okay, Tony, what do you got for number 9?
Okay, for number 9, we're going to stick with the Dehumanizer album. I was going to go with "After All," The Dead. I think that's a really cool song. It's just very doomy, very heavy. And I love the lyric of, "What do you say to the dead? Can you forgive me for living?" It's like, it's just so crazy to think about if you just ran into a zombie or something. And what are you going to say to them when they're trying to attack you? Why are you mad at me? Because I'm living. But it's a great song, and then it kind of picks up, into the second verse, and it's got a very, very melodic chorus for the song, and it's just a really neat song. And so that's going to be my next pick. Number 9 would be "After All."
Nice. Darren, what's your number?
That's a great song. Okay, so again, a little bit of a deep cut, actually maybe a lot of a deep cut. Reach back here and grab it. Ready? Elf.
All right, we got some Elf in here.
You got some Elf. Elf in the house. All right. The album, it's one of those things where when I came into this album. In 1982 is when I discovered this album, and I was at a record store, and I had just gotten Abominog by Uriah Heep, and I was looking in some records, and I hadn't. This was Abominog was actually, other than hearing Easy Living, Steeler, a couple songs here and there. Abominog was really my first full Uriah Heep album. It was largely because Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley were in the band, and I was an Ozzy fan. So I was in a record store and I was looking around, and there were some used records in a couple bins, and I was going through them, and I picked out a Uriah Heep album called Wonderworld, and it looked pretty cool. I could see Lee Kerslake was in the band, so I put that aside. And then I dug a little deeper, and I saw this Elf cover, and I'm like, that looks like Ronnie James Dio. Turned it over. Sure enough, it was Ronnie James Dio. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. I hadn't heard of Elf, but Ronnie James Dio's band. It probably sounds exactly like Heaven and Hell. Probably exactly like Mob Rules. I got to get it. I get it. I take it home. I listen to it. And right away, it starts with the boogie woogie piano. I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. What did I do? I bought this album. Oh, I want to take it back. But I got a little bit further into it, and it actually started to even out. But the reason I bring up this Uriah Heep album, Wonderworld, is because there's a song on Wonderworld, Suicidal Man.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a driving song. And again, the Uriah Heep album sounds vastly different from Abominog in a lot of different ways. But it was my first taste of, other than the songs I mentioned, it's really my first taste of 70s Uriah Heep. And Wonderworld is very 70s sounding. It's one of the more dated Uriah Heep albums, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So Suicidal Man was like kind of a driving. It's a heavy song. When I got to the second side 2 of this Elf album, and I got to the song Nevermore, I was like, it reminded me a lot of the song We Have We, I think, off of Wonderworld. It kind of had that groovy thing, but the guitar line followed the keyboards. It was more Hammond. It wasn't like the boogie piano, saloon style piano playing. It reminded me of Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, and it was more in the wheelhouse of what I was hoping to hear, of what I expected to hear. And I've always liked the song, and I don't play the album very often, but occasionally I do get an itch to listen to the song Nevermore. And there's another song on here that almost made my list too, Love Me Like a Woman, which is kind of a strange title. You can go a couple different directions with that, but I'm trusting that he went in the right direction with it as far as his intent. But I mean, it's overall, it's not a bad album, but I really dig the song Nevermore. And I was listening to it last night because it originally wasn't on my list. Like you guys, I made a few drafts. It originally wasn't on my list. And I'm like, you know what, man, I can't put like the usual suspects. My whole list can't be just the usual suspects, because that'll be kind of boring. And there's a lot of songs that I like just as much as, some of the more popular songs. And this song popped in my head. I'm like, yep, I'm going to put Nevermore on my list. So coming in at number 9, Nevermore by Elf.
Nice. Glad Elf made the list. All right, number 9 for me, from the Strange Highways album. I've always been a fan of Tracy G and the 2 Tracy G records. I did a video on my channel in defense of the Tracy G era. I've done videos just on this and Angry Machines, because I really like these records. I had drifted away from metal a little bit in the early 90s, sort of the classic metal bands. But when I heard Strange Highways and Angry Machines, it drew me back in. So the song that I have for my number 9 is Give Her the Gun. I would say that that's a pretty deep cut. It's I like Dio when he does these sort of dark ballady type of songs. It starts off with an almost like a classical type guitar thing, and when it just kicks in, the main riff is so heavy. Tracy G's guitar sound is so thick and heavy on Strange Highways and Angry Machines. I know a lot of people weren't fans of his playing, but for me, Tracy G made sense for that era in the early mid 90s, when the typical 80s style LA Guitar Hero sound was just out. Tracy G had this more industrial like sound, like he'd make squeals and noises, and he was down tuned, and he would chug on these like low single string riffs that just sounded really like mechanical. And with Vinny Appice, who's the king of like playing those slow, simple beats, you know, that are just big and huge. It just, to me, works really well. And I've always loved this song, always loved Dio's delivery in this. The lyrics, again, somebody mentioned it, I forget what, Darren, when you mentioned your first pick. Dio is so good at, he has different voices. When he sings that soft, mellow type of voice like he does at the beginning of this song, or like the way he does in a Sign of the Southern Cross, and all these different, he does it a lot where he'll sing very soft and very gentle, and then he just unleashes that monstrous voice that he has, and that control that he has between the two, and that dynamic that he has in his voice, I just think is awesome. It's on display in this song. Love Strange Highways. I love Angry Machines. Underrated, in my opinion. Always love the song. So my number 9 is Give Her the Gun.
Great pick.
All right, Tony, we are at number 8.
Number 8 for me, I'm going to go to the Mob Rules album. I'm going to go with Country Girl.
Yeah.
I've always loved that song. It's got a cool riff. I mean, of course, anything Naomi writes is cool, but it's just really cool riff. It's just kind of a swagger to the song, and you know, Ronnie's tale of hooking up with a country girl that basically was evil and broke his heart and everything. And pretty much, I fell in love with a few country girls being in North Carolina myself. So that one hits home, close to home. So yeah, so that would be Country Girl, be number 8 for me.
Awesome. All right, Darren, number 8.
Okay, number 8. Let me make sure I got the right record here. Nope. I got these out of order. Hang on, I'll be right with you.
The suspense is killing us.
Yeah, well, not too much of a deep cut. Okay, here we are. Blackmore's Rainbow. The song Catch the Rainbow is my pick from this one. I love the chorus. I love Dio's voice. This is for me, it's, and you know, I mean, I hope it's not a spoiler, but one of us is going to pick Stargazer. If not all of us, it's almost a given. But I'm referencing Stargazer because this song is almost as important to me as Stargazer. The first time I heard it, of course, you know, it was a little overshadowed by some of the more popular songs, but as a ballad, as a Dio ballad, man, it's just so good. I love the chorus. I love the melody. You know, this is all about Dio. This segment is all about Dio, but Richie, the way that he kind of channels the spirit of Hendrix in the song, I really appreciate that too. And I just love the way that Dio's voice couples with it. So yeah, number 8 for me is Catch the Rainbow.
Nice. All right, well, I'm going to stick with a ballad too. Number 8 for me is Rainbow Eyes.
Yeah.
Again, this is Ronnie showing his versatility. And if you pressed me on a singular Ronnie James Dio performance, vocal performance, you know, just Ronnie on his own, not taking into context of the entire song and everything else, this would be close to the top for me. It is so, and it's so not, you know, again, I mentioned that Dio does this with his voice, these sort of softer things, but this song has none of the, you know, big voice Dio stuff in it. It's just him gentle. It's a just beautiful ballad. He's almost like speaking through it, you know, it's so relaxed. It's so melodic. It's so gentle. And the fact that he can do this type of thing, that you can have a Stargazer as something as big and bombastic as Stargazer, you can have something that is just so gentle as this song. It's such a beautiful song. I remember when I found out that he had passed, I think this was the first song that I listened to after I found out he had passed, and because I'm sure it hit us all, like a ton of bricks when we found out that Ronnie had passed. And, I'll tell you a funny story. It's not a funny story, but an emotional story. When I found out he had passed, I was at a baseball game with my son, just sort of sitting in the grass. Somebody texted, might have been you, Darren. Somebody texted me, said, Ronnie Dio just died. And I kid you not, I looked up at the sky, big, huge rainbow sky. And I just thought like, oh, I'm going to shiver up my spine just thinking about it. But this song has always had sort of always tugged at my heartstrings. I always said to myself, if I ever ran into Ronnie James Dio, I'm going to tell him, Ronnie, my favorite song from you is Rainbow Eyes. And I think that he would have been happy with that because it's such a non-typical thing. It's not him shouting and big and loud and everything. It's just him laid back, gentle. So love it. Okay, we're at number 7, Tony.
Number 7 for me, we're going to the Last in Line album with One Night in the City. I always thought this had a great flow about this song, great riff from Vivian. Cool story. He's talking about this dark child, Johnny, and he's talking about Johnny was chosen for the crown. And then he talks about, he mentions the character Sally was the princess. So you don't really know, he writes a lot of medieval stories in his lyrics and all, but it could just be a basic story about 2 city kids, that want, trying to be together, a Romeo and Juliet type story, almost a precursor to Rock and Roll Children in a way. So number 7 will be One Night in the City.
Awesome. All right, Darren.
Okay. Number 7 for me, The Holy Diver, Straight Through the Heart. I love the song. It's probably my favorite song off of Holy Diver. As the years have gone on, Holy Diver gets listened to, oh my God, I don't know, at least once a week, several times a month. It's a staple. It's one of those albums that I can always come back to, and it never gets old. Straight to the Heart, though, man, I just love when Vinny comes in with the drum roll in the beginning, the fills. When we did our podcast, we did an episode on Holy Diver, and we had some things to say about the production maybe being a little bit thin. But on this song, it really works. It's a little dry, but it's very forceful. It's very direct. I love the riff. I love the way that Dio sings. His voice is in full command, but it's kind of spaced out. It has its own place in the song that stands out from the guitar. Dio taking center stage. The lyrics are great. Very very driving song, and so number 7 for me is Straight Through the Heart.
Nice. All right, number 7 for me, and also from the Holy Diver album, is the title track, Holy Diver. I may be a little tired of hearing this song sometimes. This falls into the category of like War Pigs, and I've heard it so many times, but when I'm at a show and this song comes on the PA system before the main band comes out, it just sounds so good. It makes you proud to be a metalhead, type of moment. It's one of those, I talk about this all the time on my channel. I really love the moment before bands come on the stage, when they're playing music over the PA system, and when certain songs come on, like Holy Diver, and everybody's just singing along, everybody's into it, it's just getting everybody revved up. It's sort of one of those proud to be a metalhead moments, the metal family. It's one of those sort of unifying type of songs. It's the heaven and hell of the Dio band, his first album from the Dio band. This is the big statement song on it with the big dramatic intro. The video, I had just gotten MTV. I was 13 years old. Seems a little silly now, but as a 13-year-old kid, Dio walking around with a sword and everything in the ruins of a castle. I mean, I was all over it. I loved it. It was those early days when that kind of stuff was, it was creating who I was going to be for the rest of my life. And so that kind of imagery, smoke and swords and ruins and castles and stuff, and just the groove of the whole song. Vivian Campbell's solo in it is fantastic. It might be one of my favorite Vivian Campbell solos. It's one of those ones you can sing along with it. it's just an epic song. If you're making a list of the greatest metal songs of all time, it's got to be in there somewhere, I would think. So, all right, that was my number 7, Holy Diver. Okay, number 6. What do you got at number 6, Tony?
Number 6, we're going to go to my favorite Rainbow album, Long Live Rock and Roll, and with a song called Lady of the Lake.
Oh yeah,
Love
man.
that song. Just the whole structure of that song is really cool.
Yeah.
I love the double vocals on the chorus of, I know she waits below only to rise on command. Just really, really cool song. I tend to, I've actually, when I play it on CD in the car sometime or whatever, I'll play it twice just because it's such a cool song. I got to hear it again to start it over because it's probably my favorite song on that album as well.
Awesome.
For sure. Lady of the Lake.
Right on.
Going.
All right, number 6, Darren.
Okay, number 6 for me, off of Heaven and Hell, is Children of the Sea. That was the song that really got me into the Dio era Sabbath. I was a diehard Ozzy fan. When it was 1981 and the feud between Ozzy and Sabbath was all over the rock magazines, I was on Ozzy's side. I was defending Ozzy 100%. And so didn't have any time for the Dio fronted Sabbath. But gradually I kind of my curiosity got the better of me, and I broke down and I bought Heaven and Hell and listened to it. Couldn't help but like it. But Children of the Sea was a song that I just listened to over and over again. I love that riff. I love the dynamics within the song, the way that it starts soft, gets a little heavier. Iommi's riff. It's a perfect song. And for me, it's probably the best song on Children of the Sea. And it's no easy task because there's a lot of great songs on Heaven and Hell. But for me, Children of the Sea comes in at number 6.
Awesome. All right, number 6 for me. Also my favorite Rainbow album. I'm glad to hear you say that, Tony, because sometimes the obvious pick is Rising, but for me, it's always been Long Live Rock and Roll. And my number 6 is Kill the King. The riff in the song is just awesome. It's so driving. Blackmore, my favorite guitar player of all time, is all over this song with his neoclassical style of playing. Cozy Pal, Ronnie completely delivering the goods. I love when Ronnie sings fantasy medieval lyrics. I mean, that is just his sweet spot. He does it so well, and he's really just coming into his own here with Rainbow, and I just love it. I love the feel of the song. I also love the arrangement of the song. The very last verse of the song modulates and goes up. So the last verse of the song is in a higher key than the first verse is. And that to me is just so clever. Rainbow, they just did stuff like that all over the place. But in this particular song, it works so well. That last verse comes in and it elevates up like it's almost like another chorus or something. And it just has so much energy to it. Love it. Number 6 for me, Kill the King. All right, we're top 5 here. This is where we're getting down to the nitty gritty here. We're splitting hairs. All right, what do you got at number 5, Tony?
Number 5 is Chasing You is definitely going to be Kill the King. It's one of my favorite Rainbow songs. And it's just a hard driving song. Everything you said, great lyrics. Cozy Powell, just listen at him go on that song.
Yeah.
I mean, he is just killing it with the double bass parts and just all the rolls and so forth. It's just an amazing song. For years, I said, Rainbow pretty much invented power metal with that song when it came out. Then I discovered when I went back and looked, I was like, well, actually Riot came out with Warrior about a year before that. So those two songs definitely set the blueprint for what would become power metal and speed metal for sure.
Yeah.
So Kill the King, number 5 for me.
Right on. Darren?
Coincidentally, Long Live Rock and Roll is my favorite Rainbow album, and so I'm really happy that you guys were all on the same page with that. It's pretty cool. A lot of people say Rising, and you'll get into arguments about it, but I've always maintained my stance that Long Live Rock and Roll is the best, but certainly my favorite. Lady of the Lake is my top 5, man. I love, love, love that song. I get chills every time I listen to it. And I'm like 30 years into this now, so but I love it. I love the melody. I love the rhythm of it. I love Dio's lyrics. One thing that's really cool, if you've ever heard the demo, it has that intro where it sounds really medieval, kind
Yeah.
of like the fanfare and stuff. And I'm not sure it really goes into the main part of the song, but it makes sense because of the topic, the subject matter of the song, Lady of the Lake, Excalibur, Macbeth, or Macbeth. Anyway, so yeah, great song. Number 5 for me, Lady of the Lake.
Okay. Yeah, great pick. All right. Okay. Number 5 for me is from the Dream Evil album, the song All the Fools Sailed Away. I mentioned it earlier that I love Dio when he sings these dark ballad type songs. Love the vibe, the mood of this one when the verse kicks in. Love the lyrics in this. We are the innocent, we are the damned. We were caught in the middle of the madness, hunted by the lion and the lamb. Ronnie, I love when Ronnie tells stories and when he sings about the downtrodden. You mentioned One Night in the City or The Last in Line. He does this sort of like singing about we rock, stand up and shout, like singing about metal fans, but not singing about them in the typical, they're wearing jean jackets, they're wearing leather, like that type of thing. He sings about them more like, hey, we're the outcasts. We're all in this together. I'm with you. This is where the power of heavy metal unites us, type of thing. And again, I love the groove, the feel of this song, the riffing on it, the moody intro, and Dio's delivery on it is just always loved this song. All the Fools Sailed Away at number 5 for me. All right, number 4, Tony.
For number 4 for me, I'm going to go with to the Heaven and Hell record with a song called Die Young. Just another hard driving song. Here's actually a 12-inch single for Die Young. I remember, like I've told the story before, my introduction to everything Sabbath and Dio and everything was someone gave me like a TDK cassette once, and it had Blizzard of Oz on one side and Heaven and Hell on the other. And that was everything. I mean, that was Dio, Sabbath, Ozzy, everything in one for me to learn about. Yeah. And Die Young was one of my favorite songs when I was getting into that record. It's a really cool song. And then I remember that summer watching like Radio 1990 or something that would come on the USA Network, and they actually showed the video for Die Young, and I never saw it on MTV ever. Mm-hmm. And they showed it on there, one like a piece of it. I don't even think they showed the whole thing, but I was just like, wow, this is so cool, Yeah. And of course, then I would discover Dio a few years later with the Rainbow in the Dark video coming out, so for the solo 10. Nice. So yeah, Die Young. That's my next pick there.
I always love the video for that. There's a spot where when everything is sort of, it stops in the song and there's just like that little keyboard thing going, and right before the da 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 da, it's like a slow motion shot of Ronnie like swinging his
sleeves.
Yeah, with the sleeve and swinging the microphone. Cool. I think he like throws it over his shoulder. I forget what he does, but he does something, and they've like got him like moving in slow motion, and this like and then it kicks back in. They're back in speed and everything. That might have been my first time too seeing a Sabbath video live, and I just remember Ronnie with the sleeves and everything, and that video and him in the mic stand. I was just like, oh my God, this is so cool. I'll tell you a funny thing. This is before the internet, for everybody out there, way before the internet. And I didn't have any cool rock magazines. I didn't see any magazines till I was a couple years into listening to this stuff. And so I didn't know how tall Ronnie was. And when you see these videos like Rainbow in the Dark, he's by himself. Holy Diver, he's by himself. You don't see him standing next to other people. And in my mind, his voice was so big and powerful that he was a giant, and to me, and then I remember years later reading like, oh, Ozzy, was making fun of him on stage during the Diary tour and everything. And I was like, really? Because in my mind, I just pictured him, he's just so big and powerful on stage, flipping the mic and Rainbow in the Dark when he's walking on that rooftop and everything. He just, and I don't care anything about his height. In my mind, he's always a giant. He was always, larger than life. So
for sure.
All right, Darren, number 4.
Okay, number 4. Doing the Mob Rules for number 4. The song "Sign of the Southern Cross." Amazing song. I love Mob Rules. I've said several times that it's probably my favorite heavy metal album. I think it's the best heavy metal album of all time. Everything is sort of represented within that album. Heavy, epic, power metal, doom metal. It's all there. It's the perfect album. But the one song that really pretty much, I think, exemplifies the greatness of Mob Rules is the song "Sign of the Southern Cross." I love the epic quality. The riffs are so heavy. It really, Martin Birch's production on the album is fantastic. But particularly in this song, you really get the full effect of how good the production is. The guitar, the light guitar, it gets heavy, and Dio, the way that he modulates his voice and soft to harsh and powerful. Perfect song, very epic. Sign of the Southern Cross for me comes in at number 4.
Nice. Okay, number 4 for me is from Heaven and Hell, the song "Heaven and Hell." Much like Holy Diver, this is a classic, legendary, carved in stone, Mount Rushmore of heavy metal song. Another one of those songs when it comes on a PA system before a show, everybody's singing the main riff. The riff is totally iconic. Ronnie's delivery in it, through everything, just the bass and the drums, and Ronnie singing over the top of it is just fantastic. It's also Ronnie at his best with this whole heaven and hell, the way his lyrics often did this, good and evil, him singing about good and evil, both sides of life. Fantastic. The way the song speeds up at the end is just beyond epic. And something that doesn't get talked about a lot with the song, but when the last chord crashes and there's just those acoustic guitars playing as the song fades out is just, you're talking about power metal. This is just like epic, beyond epic. And the way the song starts, just right on the riff, it's epic. It's so epic. It just sends a shiver up my spine. I've heard it maybe a couple million times in my life, but it's one of those songs that just never gets old. And anytime it comes on, if I hear it on the radio or I'm at home or something and you just crank it up, it's just an amazing, such a well-written song, and a signature song for Ronnie that he would carry with him through his solo career. Always play it. It's just a song that is so associated with him. All right, number 3, Tony.
Number 3, we're going to go back to Holy Diver with the opening track, "Stand Up and Shout."
Yeah.
I remember getting Holy Diver and just falling in love with it. And that song, I mean, it's just a perfect opener for the album. It's just a great riff. It's such powerful lyrics. It wakes you up. It makes you want to get up and stand up and shout. Mm-hmm. And it's just a great song all the way around. And I think he always played that one live with his different lineups and so forth. And what's Vivian and those guys are still doing it in their Last in Line band nowadays. It's definitely one that makes you stand up, get out of your seat. In other words, stand up and shout. Exactly.
Great show opener, great album opener.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Last in Line really do that well too. I was surprised. I like Last in Line, like both the albums. Saw them a few years ago, and I was looking forward to hearing the original songs. And I thought, well, they're gonna probably. I know that they played the Dio songs, the Dio era songs, but I don't think they're going to be as good as the original material. Man, I mean, it was really, really good. I was really surprised how well. What's the singer's name again?
Uh,
I forget.
yeah, I forget.
Andrew,
Guitar playing.
Andrew Freeman.
Andrew Freeman. Yeah, yeah. Oh, he was great. I mean, he didn't overdo it. He everything was phrased perfectly. He knew how to sing the songs. I was really impressed with him. He didn't, he did him justice. And of course, Vivian's playing was really, really great. Anyway, I digress. Am I next? I'm next, aren't I?
Yeah, we're at number 3.
Okay. Number 3, Rising. It looks like I beat you guys to Stargazer. So that's cool. Assuming Stargazer's on your list. Stargazer. Wow. I mean, what can I say? What can anybody say about Stargazer? We know how awesome it is. For me, gosh, it's got to be one of those songs that had a really, really profound effect. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I listened. The first time I heard it, it just absolutely blew me away. I felt like I froze, like I was like, it was just so awesome. I couldn't believe the melody, the epic quality, the way Dio's voice, it just very emotional. I mean, it almost brings you to tears. I mean, at this point, not really, but the first few times I heard it, man, it was just so incredible. And prior to that, I mean, I heard Kashmir, and when I first heard Stargazer, I started to think, well, this is kind of like a Kashmir ripoff. But man, about midway through, when Dio's voice keeps climbing and the lyrics and just the way it builds, it's just a completely different emotional animal. It's just an amazing song, and it's one of those songs that I really think should have made Rainbow, or at least this album, like a household name. I mean, I just think that
Yeah.
for whatever reason, maybe it didn't get the exposure that it deserved for who knows why. But I think if more people heard it, I think they probably would have just loved it. It's like when you talk about some of the greatest hard rock songs of all time, I mean, you're talking about like Stairway to Heaven, Kashmir. I guess you can go outside the British rock element and get into like Freebird or something. These epic emotional songs. Stargazer stands toe to toe with any of them. I mean, it's just that great of a song. For anybody that hasn't heard Stargazer,
Oh, wow.
I would almost like kidnap them and take them somewhere and play it for them and say, no, you've got to hear this. If you like hard rock and heavy metal, you've got to hear this. It is absolutely essential. So anyway, number 3 for me is Stargazer. What more can I say about it?
All right. Well, we lost Tony here for a second, and he needs to reboot his computer. So I will give my pick, but I have a feeling Stargazer is going to land up on my list also. But one comment you mentioned, I always thought the same thing. Like, how did Rainbow not become bigger? And I remember reading that Peter Grant wanted to manage Rainbow. Peter Grant, who managed Led Zeppelin, because he really felt like Rainbow could have been the next Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And with a song like Stargazer, it makes you realize that if they had stayed on this track, that they could have been, maybe they wouldn't have been quite as popular as Led Zeppelin. But I think that this era of the band could have, it could have gone, it could have gone much farther than it did. And maybe they just didn't have the management that they didn't have a Peter Grant in their corner. And it's surprising because Richie, coming out of Deep Purple and everything, his name, of course, got the band out there. But, Deep Purple isn't as big of a group in America as they are over in Europe. So that might have been part of it too, that the Deep Purple name, wasn't as big here in America as it was in the rest of the world, which is kind of surprising. If you go down Deep Purple's catalog in the 70s, really the only album I think that went platinum for them in the US was Machine Head. Everything else was gold, but when you look at Black Sabbath, their first like 4 or 5 records went multi-platinum, here in the US, a bunch of them multi-platinum. So maybe it was just that, if maybe Deep Purple was a little bit bigger in the US. Rainbow maybe would have broken in the US too. And who knows, you know, maybe they would have had that big success and maybe they would have stuck with this particular sound instead of Richie branching off into something more commercial.
Yeah, I don't know what it was that prohibited them from really being more popular in the US. I know when I was a kid, a little kid, songs, heavy rock songs, and one of the things that drew me to heavy rock was the songs "Whole Lot of Love," "Smoke on the Water," and "Slow Ride." Those three songs. That was my intro to hard rock. And of course, I had older uncles that had all the records. But yeah, I mean, Deep Purple was. I mean, they weren't obscure at that point. I mean, so when I first heard "Smoke on the Water," I have to say I was like 6 or 7, so that would have been like 74, 75. But anyway, yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe it could have been like a record label thing. Maybe they just didn't get the proper promotion. Maybe they didn't get the amount of airplay. "Man on a Silver Mountain," you know, that's one of the songs I heard, but it wasn't until a few years later, um, maybe the closer to the late 70s. But you know, maybe it was because, I mean, Rising is such a great album, and then you go from Rising to Long Live Rock and Roll, and I think that's also, you guys mentioned Ronnie, who's not here, God bless him. Or you know, but we get into this thing where everybody gets fixated on Rising, and you know, as great as it is, it always seems a little short on content.
Yeah.
Long Live Rock and Roll, just it's a solid album, and I love every song on it. So 1978, was it 78 or 77? It was 78, I think it was 78 for Long Live Rock and Roll. Things kind of oddly enough fell apart after that, and then I think Richie had the idea that he wanted to take the band in a different direction and go into the more commercial, sort of like a Bad Company or a Foreigner type of way. And I like Down to Earth too. It's cool, you know. It's sort of sad to see that classic British hard rock version of Rainbow sort of go away and turn into something else.
Yeah, and I agree with you about Rising. That for me is Long Live Rock and Roll beats out Rising for me because this just has more songs. Whereas Rising, songs like A Light in the Black, as much as I like them, there's a lot of sort of jamming and instrumental type of stuff on it, which is cool. But I just feel there's a little bit more varied in the song, more songs and more varied type song things going on the Long Live Rock and Roll album. All right, well, I'm going to go on to number 3. Hopefully Tony is back in here soon. We may have to pause the video for a second, but I'm going to move on to my number 3, which is from the Mob Rules album, The Sign of the Southern Cross. I had to put it on my list, had to put it up high. What can you say about this song? It's epic, it's dramatic, it's so slow, it's so heavy, it's so doomy. Ronnie's delivery on it is so powerful. Those big hanging chords from Iommi. Vinny Appice, the king of the slow, simple drum beat. You know, his drum set is so huge sounding, and it just perfectly works in this song. That bubbling bass effect thing that Geezer has going on underneath everything, just so awesome, so powerful, so big. Say this all the time, Darren, you know, my favorite Dio line there at the end of the song, the 8 miles high about to fall,
Yeah.
and no one there to catch you. It's just so epic. Ronnie was so good at those little like tag lines that he would put on a song, like as it was fading out, or like as towards the end of the song. You know, they weren't really part of the chorus or something, but he would just throw in these little one line here, 1 or 2 lines at the end of the song, and they're often just such great little exclamation points on the songs that just awesome. An amazing song. You mentioned Mob Rules being an incredible heavy metal album, and it is one of the one of the greatest metal albums of all time. Both me and you absolutely love it. And it looks like Tony Dio is back. We'll give him a second to join us here as we round the corner on our top two. This is where things get real.
I'm back.
He's
Hey!
back. All right. We riffed for a little while on
Rainbow
and Rising and everything. And I did give my number three. I gave my number three was Sign of the Southern Cross.
Okay.
From Mob Rules. All right. So now we're here at number two. Welcome back, Tony. And you didn't just leave us because you wanted to change your top two, did you? You got nervous there.
I could have
pressure was on because this is splitting hairs now. Really, for me, the top three for me are just like some of my favorite songs of all time. So, all right, what do you got at number two, Tony?
Number two, we're going back to Holy Diver, and we're going with "Don't Talk to Strangers."
Yeah,
I think that's just a brilliant song all the way around. Where it starts out with this slow part with Ronnie singing really soft, and he's singing about the things that you're told or things you're supposed to be or you're supposed to enjoy or like, and but beware, it may not be what you think it really is. And when it just kicks in with that killer riff and the lyrics are just top notch, and I think it's probably Vivian's best recorded guitar solo on any of the Dio albums.
go on with that.
Yeah, so "Don't Talk to Strangers," number two.
Awesome. All right, Darren, what's your number two?
Number two, going back to the first album, Rainbow's first album, that is, Temple of the King. Love the song Temple of the King. I love Dio's phrasing. I love the lyrics. I love the vibe of the song. It has kind of that, I mean, I'm going to describe it as sort of a medieval feel. And I largely do, I guess, to some of the words choices in the lyrics, the tolling of the great black bell, things like that. I just love the way that he phrases the lyrics wrap around the melody. It's a very storytelling song. His voice is kind of more subdued, very melodic. Yeah, I mean, when I first heard Richie Blackmore's Rainbow, of course, it was overshadowed a little bit by Man on a Silver Mountain. But 16th Century Greensleeves is another one that hit me right away. But Temple of the King followed in short order, as well as Catch the Rainbow, which came in at my number 8. But for number 2, Temple of the King.
Awesome. All right, my number 2. Here it is, Rising, Stargazer. Tony, when you were out there for a little bit, we were talking about how Rainbow, Peter Grant, manager for Led Zeppelin, wanted to manage Rainbow. And I've always thought of Stargazer as kind of like their Kashmir, although I like Stargazer better than Kashmir. I keep using the word epic, but when Ronnie's involved in things, he just brings that element. And man, the drum intro, Cozy Powell, we mentioned Cozy Powell.
Oh, yeah.
Just
big.
Huge, epic.
I forgot to mention that. Yeah.
Legendary.
It's amazing.
That little guitar riff there is just so cool. The lyrics, the storytelling in the lyrics are amazing.
Yep.
Blackmore's solo. There's a spot in that solo where he starts climbing up the guitar neck and he's holding this note and he's just bending it and bending it and bending it. And you're just sitting there like on the edge of your seat.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
He just keeps going and going and going. It's just like
the Cozy with the double bass. Bum, 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 bum.
Yeah, it's like it keeps keeps rising. It's just Blackmore, such an amazing. He can shred with the best of them, but he could also take one note and just really make something just out of one note. And that solo there, the way that solo builds and keeps going and going, the strings in it as the song is going out. Just a killer song. I had a big song battle poll on my on Lair the Alchemist here, and it whittled down to, I forget what the final 5 was, but Stargazer was in there in the final 5, and it won handedly. So it was out of we had something like 50 plus songs in this battle, and it was up against all heavyweights, all the best songs I could think of, and Stargazer was the one that came out as easily number 1. Amazing song.
Yeah.
All right, we're here. Number one. What do you got, Tony?
Number one, we're going to go back to the Mob Rules album and Falling Off the Edge of the World.
Yeah.
Definitely one of my favorite, or might be my favorite Ronnie James Dio song. Like I said, I got to put it at number one. It's just that's just such an epic song. The way it builds with the slow opening part with the violin and everything, and he's just singing really, you know, just so with so much conviction. He's these opening lines, and it just the way that long somber, you know, that whoa comes on, and then the kick drum comes in, and it just builds from the Omni riff, and then it goes into this complete like speed thing. You know, they pick up the pace, and it's just this hard driving song, and just really dark, menacing lyrics. I remember going to the Heaven and Hell show at Radio City Music Hall, the one that they filmed and recorded. And, you know, was sitting through the show, and he had a few beers, and I really needed a bathroom break, a restroom break. And I was like, I got to go sometime. So I finally picked the time to go, and I was trying to get back. And as I was trying to get back, we were like in the upper balcony. They're playing that, and I'm just like, oh man, and I'm trying to get back to my seat, you know, and it's because I mean, that's, like I said, that's my favorite one, and it's just awesome. Such a haunting song, and it's so heavy.
Awesome, man. Yeah, and his delivery
Off the Edge of the World will be number one for my picks. And like I said, my list could change tomorrow, and there's so many songs. I can't say there's anything that. There's so many other songs that I like a whole lot, and Stargazer's definitely one I'm just not in this 10 today, but it could be later.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Yeah, this could, my list could be completely different tomorrow.
Yeah, I like some Elf stuff. I like all kinds of stuff that they've done. You know, it's just, these were the 10 that I picked this week. So.
And Ronnie's thing at the beginning of that song, I think about closing the door, but lately I think of it more. That is just such a
it's a very deep line. Yeah, it really is.
One thing I love about Falling Off the Edge of the World, I love, and I think you started to describe it, but I'm going to my version of what I think is so cool about it. When it gets past the intro point, before it gets into the darker, heavy part where it's just Vinny's kick drum, boom, 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 and then Iommi cranks up this riff that's just like, other than the riff and Under the Sun, I think it's Tony's heaviest riff of all time. It is crushing.
I'll agree.
Crushingly heavy. And it's just like, I mean, you listen to that and it's just like, it's wide open. I mean, when you close your eyes and you visualize this riff, it just takes up the entire area that, you know, wherever you are, the riff just goes from one side to the other. It's just like, boom, and it just builds on that intensity where the intro ends to where it's going for the rest of the song. It's a perfect segue. I mean, it's a fantastic song, and didn't make my top 10 today, but tomorrow it probably would.
And I always think about that spot you're describing with that bass drum and that riff coming in. I always think of it in monster movies, you know, King Kong or Godzilla. There's a dinosaur. They can't see it. It's somewhere far in the distance, and just everything is shaking. You know, boom.
Plunging steps.
Right. It's just this monster ready to peek out around a corner or something. You know, fantastic. All right. So Darren, what's your number one?
All right. Well, my number one is going back to Long Live Rock and Roll. Kill the King. Love it. My number one Rainbow song. I mean, I can never listen to it just once. It's at least 2 or 3 times. I think it was last week I was driving to work, and I think it was the second song that came on and I don't have a very long drive. I got a 25-minute drive, but it was the second song that came on in the morning, and I just kept playing it and playing it. It was the song that I listened to the entire way that I drove to work. And I don't know, maybe it's been about like the millionth time I've heard the song, but anytime I listen to it, anytime it comes on, it's not just once, it's two times, 3 times, 4 times. I mean, they can just go over and over and over again. I love the guitar solo. Ronnie or Tony, I think you said that it was like pretty much like one of the first power metal songs. I agree with that. Um, it's just a real driving. It does have a British rock vibe to it, but the intensity level is probably beyond anything that I think was coming out at the time. It was really original. But that whole solo section um, is phenomenal. The movements, the phrasing, Blackmore's phrasing, and then when Dio comes back into it, the way that he just like his voice is a higher octave than it when he before the solo part. He just is like he's building on the energy from the solo and just comes in and just takes over and takes the song out from there. Just master class in songwriting, and yeah, Kill the King, #1 for me. Love it.
The ending part is so epic as well. It's just the way they come back in with the the drum roll parts, and he's singing oh kill, over it.
Yeah.
Just dramatic ending.
Yeah,
Awesome. They almost needed an explosion at the end of it, to end it.
Right.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, my #1 from the same album is Gates of Babylon. The popular one to pick is Stargazer, but I've always liked Gates of Babylon better. That riff from Blackmore, that Egyptian classical sounding riff is just absolutely killer. I'm a sucker for that kind of scale, that kind of sound. It just sounds so dramatic and so has a certain mood and feel to it. The song, that like pan flute or whatever sound it is at the beginning of the song, when everything kicks in, it almost has a little bit of a funky driving feel to it. The riff is very staccato and everything. Dio's lyrics, his delivery, just as it is in all these other songs, it's just fantastic. The part in the song where it goes into that, like the power of what has come before rises to trap you within. It's just, it's just epic. And this is another one, the guitar solo in this is just, oh my gosh, man. Who is this? Don Airy? This is Don Airy, right? On keyboards.
No, I think it's Gary Driscoll.
Gary, okay.
What was his name? David Stone.
Oh,
David Stone.
David Stone. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
That whole section in the middle there, all those chords and the changes, it's like a orchestral classical piece or something. Blackmore's solo is fantastic. I just love it. It's just an absolutely amazing song. And it comes in at #1 for me. So, all right, there you go. There's our top 10 list of our favorite Ronnie James Dio songs across all the different projects and bands he was in. Let's do a real quick go around. Give us a couple that almost made it on your list. Tony, what were a couple that almost made it into your top 10?
One of the new, the newer like songs, like Adam and Evil. I always thought that was a cool Dio song.
That's my favorite song from that album.
I always thought that was a really cool song. And Bible Black from the Heaven and Hell record is a great song. It's a really good heavy song. And I don't know. I've always liked Sign of the Southern Cross a whole lot myself, and you guys had that in the list as well, and that's always been it's a great one. I thought it was pretty cool. We didn't really have. We had a few that we all touched on.
We only had one that all three of us had, which was Kill the King. Yeah, that's the only one that all three of us had. I was surprised. I was thinking that I was nervous. I was afraid our lists were going to be too. We were all going to be talking about the same songs, but it just goes to show you the depth of the catalog here. There's so many.
Another one I wanted to mention. I always really liked Invisible as well off Holy Diver. I always thought that was a really cool song.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Darren, you have any ones that almost cracked your top 10?
I have a lot. Man on the Silver Mountain didn't make my list. It should have, but I tried to squeeze it in there. I tried to figure out something that I could take out and put it in, and I really couldn't. Even going down to number 9 and 10, I didn't want to take them out because I thought that they were worthy of mentioning. Man on the Silver Mountain, definitely one that didn't make the list this time, but tomorrow, if I were to compile another 10, it probably would maybe be number one. Fever Dreams off of Magica. I think that's a cool tune. From Strange Highways, you represented Strange Highways in your list, and I would go with what is it? Father, was it the first song, Mary and the Holy Ghost?
Yeah, Jesus,
Jesus,
Mary,
Mary, and
Mary and the Holy Ghost.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that song, even though I can't remember the title of it. But and then the Tracy G thing is always, and you mentioned that you really took to Tracy G right off the bat. That was a hard sell for me, especially coming from like, you know, Vivian Campbell. I mean, just in the Dio band, Vivian Campbell, even Craig Goldie had kind of like a Blackmore vibe, and Tracy G just came in with his own style. And you're right. I mean, for the 90s, what is it, 92, I think it was,
Yeah.
91, 92, or was it later than? It was 93 because it came out after Dehumanizer. Yeah, it was probably made more sense for him to play that way. It was a little more contemporary, but it was kind of it was a grower for me. But now I absolutely love the album. I love Strange Highways. It's great. So I would have picked that song from, and in fact, I think it might have ended up in one of my early drafts on the list. What else? Well, from Holy Diver, definitely Don't Talk to Strangers. You know, but that to me seemed like kind of a given. And you know, and there are times when I've heard it so many times, I'll sort of tune it out a little bit. I got to kind of be. Usually, I'm more receptive to Don't Talk to Strangers when I'm listening to Holy Diver. In the context of the album, I really appreciate it more than just the random song that pops up and shuffle on my iPod or something like that. So Gates of Babylon's another one that made an early draft of my list. And Country Girl, love Country Girl. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of songs. It was hard to whittle it down to 10 because I mean, and that's when we were talking about it, John, and I said, well, I mean, so 10 songs. We're talking about solo era, we talking about Rainbow era, we talking about Black Sabbath era, and you're like career. I'm like, oh man, okay, all right, I'll be creative with this one, I guess. So yeah, I mean, I could probably compile easily top 100, top 50, and love all the songs. So
right on. All right, well, for me, I'm kind of surprised none of us picked Man on the Silver Mountain, did we?
Yeah, I mentioned that.
Yeah.
That was one of the songs I didn't.
I like it. It's just,
yeah.
I've heard
When
it so many
you're
times,
putting
I
the list together, it just missed. So for me, that just missed. That was on an initial. Again, Darren, you mentioned it. I thought like, oh, well, okay, the obvious ones. I put Man on a Silver Mountain on there. I put Last in Line on there. But as I started making my list, it just kept getting bumped down lower. So Man on a Silver Mountain, Killing the Dragon, almost made my list. Last in Line almost made it. Falling Off the Edge of the World. Children of the Sea. Again, there's Temple of the King. It felt strange that I really only had one song from Heaven and Hell and one song, Die Young, almost made it on there for me. Yeah. Country Girl almost made it on there. Falling Off the Edge of the World, I mentioned that one. Almost had Over and Over. I mean, you could just, it just never stops. So, all right, well, there you go. That was our top 10. Like we said, we could have put so many. Go ahead, Tony.
One we could bring up too. I mean, I always thought Stars was a great song. I mean, you really didn't look at it as a Dio song, but he wrote the lyrics to it and he had the whole hearing aid thing. But it's a great song. It really is.
We watched the documentary of that not that long ago, a couple of months ago. My wife and I watched that. And I'm like, I didn't really pay much attention to that when it came out, but that's a good song. And the documentary.
There's a clip of them in Japan, of Dio in Japan, with the band with Craig Goldie and all, and they're doing Stars.
Yeah, they played that live a few times, which is really interesting. Very cool. All right, there you go, everybody. Let us know what your top 10 favorite Ronnie James Dio career songs are. Let us know in the comments down below. Let us know what you think of some of our picks. I'd like to thank Tony for joining us here again at the Lair, and of course Darren. And till we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.